Hello, and welcome again to episode 3. Well, the state of affairs at the end of the last broadcast was such that Terry Slater was suitably unimpressed by the music of a-ha. And when I got back to Rendezvous that evening to be greeted by 3 very eager Norwegians who were desperate to know what Terry thought of their music, I kept the details from them and merely suggested that we do some remixing and that I would see if I could persuade Terry to come and meet them personally. Well, he was reluctant to do so, but Terry nevertheless did travel up to Sydenham to meet the guys, and luckily he was as impressed on meeting them for the first time as I was. He thought they had fantastic looks, he thought they were very charismatic, had great personalities, and above all they were extremely polite and courteous. We have to remember this is post-punk era, early 80s, when an aggressive manner was what was normally expected from a rock musician. Within just a few days, Terry and I had several meetings and decided that we wanted to manage the band. The band were absolutely categorically over the moon about the possibility of both Terry and I looking after their affairs in the future, and said an absolute yes to coming on board. We had to set up a management company. I suggested, as I would, we call it JT Management Limited. Unfortunately that was gone, so it was TJ Management Limited that became the company that handled the management affairs of the band a-ha. To keep things absolutely fair for the negotiation of the management contract between Terry and myself and the band, I put the group in touch with half a dozen or so very reputable music lawyers. They needed proper representation, especially when it was coming to making a decision and making a contract that could affect the rest of their lives. So in August 1983, TJ Management Limited officially became a-ha's representatives. The deal was initially for 5 years, although at the time I remember well the boys saying that they would like us to be involved with them for the rest of their lives. They were quite happy to sign a management contract for life at the time, but that would have been most unethical. And anyway, the lawyer's bill for the group, well, I had to pay for that because the boys didn't have any money of their own at the time. In terms of share, well, we decided to split the a-ha earnings 4 ways, 25% each for each member of the group and 25% of the management company. Probably the most unbelievable twist at this stage, on looking back at the whole story, was that TJ Management's lawyers at the time were Sheridan's. They'd been my personal lawyers for 5 years or more, and I trusted them implicitly. Within a very short space of time after the boys became successful, Sheridan's no less were beginning to act on a-ha's behalf against the management company's contract. They were trying to renegotiate the very deal that they had made themselves for us with a-ha. This change of arrangement had huge repercussions for me. Suddenly I was having to get a new lawyer to represent myself in all the business dealings with a-ha. Many years later there was a very full and thorough investigation into all the financial dealings, and if I just read you a very short paragraph, it'll give you some idea as to what was involved. It is clear that, following the reconstruction of the band's corporate structure in 1986, royalties were received either directly by Sheridan's or paid into bank accounts which were not owned by TJ Management Limited. This was in contradiction to the management agreement of 1983. But I must remember that this is episode 3, and it's far too early to get involved in all this talk of business, but it may perhaps give you an inkling as to why I still had those demo tapes in 1986. Anyway, let's get back to the more pleasurable side of dealing with a-ha. During 1983 and 84, the band were incredibly productive writing-wise. They came up with probably 35 to 40 new tunes during those 2 years, and most of those were later released on the first 3 albums. Terry and I had told the band how important it was to use every spare minute to write new material, because should success come their way, that time would be very hard to find. At this time, I was the sole financial provider for the group. TJ Management was a 50-50 company, but somehow it was me that ended up paying out all the expenses for the group. Obviously they were recording all the time using my studio. They needed money to live on. Essentially, as managers, we needed to get a recording contract or even a publishing contract. Certainly we needed another party to contribute to the fund. Certainly I couldn't keep going as it was, being the sole provider. Maintaining 3 lively Norwegians who enjoyed a London social life wasn't an easy thing to do financially. I felt it was about time Terry put his hand in his own pocket, because even though we had a 50-50 management company, it was still me that was paying out all the money for all the expenses, for all the recording. So I suggested to him that as they were feeling a bit homesick, that he come up with £500 each to cover their airfares and expenses, so that they could go home, see their parents and families, and that way I would be getting a commitment from Terry, money-wise, and it gave me the opportunity to go and do an acting job in Portugal. He assured me that this was absolutely fine, and off I flew to Portugal. I phoned the guys, they said yes, we've got £500 each, we're off to Norway. I was delighted, except when I got back I discovered that they did receive £500 each, but it was by virtue of them signing a publishing deal with ATV Music for £1,500. This was an unbelievably small amount of advance for any band to receive, especially when Warner Brothers came to sign us for the record contract a short while later, and then expressed their horror at having found that the publishing had gone. All of this took place because Terry wasn't prepared to put his hand in his own pocket at a crucial time. You can imagine my horror when I found out quite some time later that Terry Slater was being paid a retainer by ATV Music all along, and that he was contractually bound to deliver anything he found directly to ATV. I really hope that my dealing with all the business side of things isn't boring you, but it is a very important part of the story for me and my relationship with a-ha. An awful lot of things went on behind my back, and as I said right at the very beginning, this is my opportunity to put the record straight and to explain things how they really were. In the next episode, I'll be dealing with Morton and his ballet lessons at Pineapple Studios. There's quite a few interesting things to come.